swap mics around. Okay, and this is Joe.
Hi.
We're going to do a project called Rand, and it's basically it's a streaming on the internet, but most like streaming radio stations lists of MP3s. They do, so there's a huge chunk of stuff, or occasionally they'll broadcast kind of live gigs and so on. But what we do with Rand is we broadcast the live output of programs that are being executed in real time. So what you're listening to now is the stream. The actual audio that you're hearing is being generated on a computer in the UK. So there's a little application running at the moment by a guy called Mijim. This particular one's written in Max, and it's currently executing, and the data is being broadcast to us here from the machine in the UK. So, in fact, it might change while we're at it. And we've got it running on a sort of a schedule that means that every 15 minutes or so, a different application gets run by a different person. And there's a wide range. Is this making sense to everyone so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Just feel free to ask if I'm talking complete nonsense. So we've got a wide range of applications and a wide range of different types of software that you can use to develop these programs. So we're not playing back any pre-recorded music at any point. It's all being created in real time by the applications, by the programs on these computers. So there's people using like Pure Data, people using Max MSP, people using like C-coded programs, people doing stuff in Director, Flash. We've got all kinds of different people doing different projects on it, and the output ranges from pretty kind of conceptual stuff to like the Wiz one at the moment is full-on sort of noise workout essentially. We're using a lot of FM synthesis techniques, kind of wide range of projects.
Is there a human that's switching the program?
No, it's a bit like the system you got up here. It's all scheduled by the computer. So there's a computer that sits in the UK, it's completely unattended, it runs for 24 hours a day, and it just runs programs, closes programs, changes schedules, loads files, just programs itself, and then all the audio that it produces is broadcast via this streaming server across the internet, so you can pick it up from wherever you like, essentially.
It makes it less work for us.
You're going to stick one of the patches and I can run them.
Yeah, which one are you going to run?
Shall I run the Pix one?
Yeah, most of the stuff is all submitted. Like when we first started the station, we kind of already knew about 10 or so artists that were sort of doing interesting stuff with generative music, and we're still just operating on the basis that people are submitting stuff and people are contacting us. Which one's this?
Pix one.
This one's by a guy called Pix, who he works with Farmer's Manual, a group from Austria, and this patch actually takes a computer's kernel and then renders it to the sound card, so what you're listening to is the computer in Huddersfield chugging away.
Well, this is local, we're running it here, but yeah, it's that kind of aspect. Shall I run what Thor's? I'll run Thor and Enrique's one. The two you've heard just happen to have been pretty kind of noisy bass tracks, but there's a kind of wide range of material we've got here. This is a piece done by Thor and Runa Magnusson from Iceland, and this is quite an ambient piece that uses what seems to be to us an absolutely enormous library of sound files, kind of field recording type sounds.
It's done in Director.
Yeah, it's written in Director, but this one's run for like weeks and it still comes up with things we've never heard. So it's a really nice kind of, there's quite a lot of difference between the different programs that we do run. We try and do that. We want to have a kind of range of different ways of using the software. I mean, the only real kind of rule there is that whatever the program does, it has to generate the sound in real time. It has to have an element of randomness or variability in it. It has to kind of be different in some way every time it's run.
I think this one's about 600 megabytes. So
Yeah, so it's just got masses of sound files in it basically that it's using.
they're both from Iceland, so sort of Icelandic field recordings.
Okay, what other ones have we got? We're just trying to run through a sort of range of different pieces
And
here.
some ambient ones.
Shall we run one? Okay. Yeah, I mean, some of it's quite kind of conceptually complex work, and some of it's not so much. This is quite an ambient sort of. This is a piece I did that I was quite interested in the idea of making sort of whale music, and it's like infinitely variable, nice ambient music you can listen to. So there's no kind of strong conceptual background behind this. Whereas then there's some guys coming who, in fact, there's some people here that have got pieces on it. Aid Ward, I don't know if you saw the performance last night, but he's written some software that's running on it. And also there's a group coming called Alku, and they wrote a quite interesting piece of generative software, which basically it's quite similar to the disk piece you saw earlier, actually, the floppy disk. And what it does is it analyses audio, and then it writes the analysis into a file, and then it plays that file as audio, and then it analyses that, and then it recursively kind of writes and analyses itself. So it's always sort of manipulating and generating its own sort of code, I guess. It's a sort of chicken and egg scenario with that. So we've got quite a range of things. We've also, shall I try and run the Deep 13 one?
Yeah.
You have to stop that.
Can I ask a question, because I think it's hard to know. Do all the music files you now describe, are they on your server?
Sorry?
Are all the music files on your server?
Yeah, they're all on there's one machine that holds all the programs, and then that machine runs and closes programs, starts them, stops them. So it's all kind of run from one point. Yeah, go on now, I'll run the, try and get the Deep 13.
This one's a bit different. This is by a guy from Austria who calls himself Deep 13, and he uses pure data here, and he takes another radio stream live off the internet, and then remixes it within pure data with itself, and then sort of streams it back out. So it's kind of using random processes, but it also depends what's coming in on the radio stream. So it's completely, if people are talking, you know, it has one particular effect. If it's music, it sounds completely different. So what's this?
This is the Radio 13 stream.
Alright, so this is now streaming his own radio station, which he has in Austria.
And then it's processing and remixing it and rebroadcasting it. But the application's set up so that sometimes it will launch like a country and western, hook onto a country and western stream, reprocess it, rebroadcast it. So it's interesting how different people use different sources of randomness, or like different elements that they use to control the variability of their processes. And like, do you want to talk about the random number research things?
Yeah, so we've got lots of other projects, lots of different ideas, and sort of started looking into random number generation, because some people whose patches we got they're not actually very random. They sort of repeat themselves quite a lot, especially if you've been listening to the station for a year or whatever. So I started looking into you know, random numbers and how random numbers are generated on computers, and then in effect like not being random because they're deterministic.
It's the layer one. I'm just playing in the background.
This is not connected to what I'm talking about.
I'm just running stuff
randomly. So I started looking on the internet for sources of real random numbers, and it turns out that first I found a CGI script which supplies people like casinos with streams of random numbers based on atmospheric air pressure. So you can actually get this stream of numbers into your program and actually use them to you know, control music. And then after that I found a site which has a Geiger counter in Switzerland connected or close to a radioactive source, and it's picking up beta particle decay and then streams the numbers again for people to use via a website. So we've managed to get the numbers from that because it uses quantum mechanics and the sort of uncertainty principle, and the gap between the particle decays is truly random, supposedly. And then to take those numbers and make music with that. So these are other sort of areas of research that we're sort of looking into.
Yeah, I mean, we're just really interested in giving. It's the sort of thing that it's quite kind of science fiction idea. There's this machine somewhere that's just doing the music, and there's a lot of issues that associate with randomness, with generative audio that we're really interested in. And some people have a bit of a problem with the whole kind of scenario, the fact that it is in a sense random, and we've had like big arguments with particularly kind of traditional composers who get really stressed out about the fact that like this may well be performing music in the middle of the night that no one is listening to. It will never be repeated and no one's listening to it and it won't be heard anyway. But we quite like the idea that it's doing that. It's kind of it's quite abstract. So yeah, I mean, one of the music on it is particularly traditional, but it does range from being quite kind of listenable to being really quite conceptual and quite hard to listen to. But we like the idea that that kind of contrast is there, and it's good to give people the opportunity to kind of explore the ideas of using generative systems. We've got people who have written software for it that when it runs the software, it remembers the state of itself, and then when it starts again, the next time it's scheduled, it carries on from where it left off. So it's kind of, instead of it starting an original, a random seeded point every time, it's evolving in some way over the space of time. So we've got a whole kind of range of different pieces of software that we use or what other people have contributed, and we openly invite anybody who's interested in writing generative systems to kind of contribute. The one thing we're trying to do at the moment is to try and do things with more kind of external devices. Everything's quite software driven, but we're looking at using sort of external devices such as using plants or other kind of physical objects and interfaces to. Did you say lemmings?
Lemons.
Lemons to generate sort of audio, so that next to the actual machine that's running all these applications, so we can have like a box of lemons that's that's pumping out some kind of oscilloscope, and when it's the scheduling time for the lemons, they get mic'd up and we hear what they're doing. And we've also got somebody who's suggested one of their projects they wanted to do is to have a mobile phone connected to the server, and whenever it schedules their slot, they get called, and they basically have to answer the phone night or day, and their performance is wherever they happen to be at that point in time. So there's a kind of whole range of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a very kind of hardcore programming thing. It can also be something that's conceptually interesting in that way. Are we still on time? Oh, you have loads of time.
4 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. Are you inviting people to submit projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you inviting people to write, to develop projects for this?
Yeah, I mean, we've got about 30, nearly sort of 30 pieces on at the moment.
I mean, that's the only way we can exist, is if we're getting pieces by artists to play. I mean, in a way, we're a bit kind of like a record label and a radio station, where a lot of these pieces will have never been distributed or broadcast. So we have a website as well. I should probably just mention that.
Oh, yeah.
That's rand.org, but with a 4 for the A of rand. And there's information there about each artist and each piece.
Yeah, on the site we've got like a schedule, so you can see what time certain programs are being triggered. At the moment we're actually rewriting the schedule to be a randomised schedule, because obviously that fits more with the kind of aesthetic of the whole project. So there's a schedule, you can check out each artist. Some people have put like quite detailed information about how they generate their particular pieces, and some quite kind of mysterious about it, but there's a kind of range of material on here. And then we've also got some sections about like generative audio, the kind of software that can be used to produce generative pieces, and also some of the mathematical and kind of algorithmic techniques that people have used. So, we're sort of actively inviting people to think about this way of producing sound, and sort of get involved and use some of the software. I mean, we're trying to get an additional machine to run super collider patches, because that's one thing we can't support at the moment, and various other pieces of custom written software. But I mean, we're quite interested in the idea of having like someone writes their own operating system for a machine, we'll try and have that machine there running itself, you see what I mean? So we've got pieces written for modular synthesizers. Yeah, a random operator will be fine.
I hope you're not planning to do an audio feedback back to the radioactive source in Switzerland.
No, that'd be quite interesting though.
I have found a USB Geiger counter on the internet, which I'm going to buy, and then sort of you get a small glass bead with it, which apparently is quite radioactive but safe, and it also picks
Yeah,
picks up background radiation from the Big Bang. So I'm quite into sort of looking into using that.
Anti-terrorist device.
Yeah.
Can you just plug it into the London Transport bus countdown system?
Yeah. I mean, anything like that is just the thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're interested. We've got another piece that basically uses a webcam and it translates the visual input of the webcam directly into sound. So the idea is that we're going to mount that webcam outside the building where the broadcast machine is, and when it comes to that schedule, it will be broadcasting whatever's happening outside as sound. So I suppose effectively you could walk out there with your laptop streaming the thing and interact with it in some way, depending on where you were. But there's all kinds of ideas about using it, weather data. The station's obviously online on the machine, so we've also got a newsreader program that every noon it downloads the BBC's homepage, reads it out, the news. So we have like news items. And we're quite interested in having also having a book at bedtime. We're hoping to get Finnegan's Wake. Because it's obviously nice and cyclical, so we're going to get computerised and read out of Finnegan's Wake.
Another idea was to have two bots having like conversations.
Yeah.
So you could have like programs,
talk show
type things with two bots.
You could post up a topic, and that would be then fed to the two chat bots that would interact, and then their conversation would be broadcast as part of the chat show hour.
For your bedtime story, you used William Burroughs' Catch-Up Method.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's the one thing that's really exciting on the project for us is that there seems to be so many different possible sort of applications that could be made, different sort of ways, routes you could take the software. We're quite interested in, we're looking for some idea of writing a jingle generator, because that's one thing we haven't got at the moment. So it'd be quite nice every now and again to have it kick in with some totally random generated jingle every quarter of an hour or something.
I am rather worried about the commercial implications of all this.
Really?
It seems to be going really commercial.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, I mean, we're interested in the whole kind of, it has actually, the whole idea of generative music, I mean, there's a lot more topics of conversation that are centred around it, and there's a lot of kind of concern in the traditional music publishing sort of arena where they're really frightened of it because it's hard to publish something that's always different.
What OS do you run on?
Actually, the main machine's running Windows, but the server is running Linux.
Okay, but so if you want to have something, the music pieces run on the Linux?
Yeah, everything's running on Windows because we've got Max for Windows now, we've got Pure Data for Windows, Director for Windows. I mean, there are a couple of things like SuperCollider that we can't support at the moment, which is a shame, and a couple of other libraries and so on. But we can run pretty much. We haven't had too much problem yet with anyone submitting things we've not been able to support.
How many listeners do you have usually?
I think the listener peak is probably 2.
Yeah, and it doesn't. You don't get a vast amount of people tuning in all day.
Do you have many computers listening?
Sorry?
Do you have many computers listening to you?
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We're quite there broadcasting it into space.
I think there's a lot of hits on the website, but I'm not sure if people actually listen to it. They
Yeah.
probably tune in for a few minutes and then think, oh, that's weird.
That's a bit too strange for me.
When you start getting requests from Alpha Centauri, then you know it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite good. We work.
That's a question.
Oh yeah, go on.
I was curious about the attraction to randomness as a strategy. I mean, it's a perennial favorite computational work, but what does it suggest to you that makes it such an attractive strategy?
Oh man, there's loads of things. I mean, if you go into like the sort of theories behind generative audio, there's all kinds of like the idea of an infinite length piece, or the difference between something that's static, a static playback of something. If you change one element of it every time it plays back, is it then no longer static? Is it generative? And then how much chaos does something have to have before it becomes sort of, people represent themselves thematically through variation in their pieces. So you'll always know whose piece it is, even though it will always be slightly different. So there's a kind of lot of theoretical things behind it, like theoretically if you created a program that could had so much flexibility, it could generate any piece of music. I mean, obviously they can't exist, but it's a kind of interesting concept to consider. And there's also the idea of it being completely autonomous and slightly out of control of the creator's sort of input. So you can actually improvise with your own software and it'll surprise you.
That doesn't need to be random.
No, it doesn't necessarily need to be random, but the random element of it is something that is the unpredictability, obviously.
It doesn't have to be random to be unpredictable.
No, but there are different ways of introducing unpredictability into things, and that's one way of doing it. And we don't just sort of take randomness just as randomness, like you say. We do take systems, like organic systems data, that's not necessarily random, so there's a kind of way of tying something into, say, the temperature level. So there's a kind of interactivity in a way.
I think it's mainly generative music.
Yeah.
I think like if you start talking about randomness, the station's just, it's not random, and a lot of the pieces they're not obviously not random.
Yeah.
They're created by people to do certain things within certain parameters.
Yeah.
So they might use randomness, but
I mean,
what is randomness?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many sorts of randomness. There's so many ways of approaching that.
and I don't think we're like, some people kind of tend to assume that because you're involved in a project like this that you're some kind of fundamentalist random music person, and that you don't listen to normal music. Yeah. But I think we're both involved in other music projects as well, and this is just one area of interest for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects with generative music, and the kind of autonomous nature of writing something, and then the idea of authorship. There's a kind of shared authorship between you and your program, in a sense. And then the question of recording things. Should we be recording any of this? I mean, I like to think, well, probably no, because it doesn't it's the execution of it in a way. It's the real time aspect that's interesting. And when you record it, it kind of loses something away, but then does it? Because if you listen to it, and you don't have that conceptual background, you don't know that it's created in that way, then you approach it in a different way. And there's also the idea that some people, deterministic music, you want to listen to music because you want to listen to choices that have been honed down. You want to listen to someone's completed vision of something. Whereas with this sort of music, you've only got 5 seconds. With this sort of music, you're listening to a set of thematic variations that people allow you to experience. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.